there's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. I got with me today Natalie Lambert, who is CMO of Instart. Natalie, how you doing today?
I'm so great. How are you?
I am well. So Natalie's going to be talking to us about something really cool, actually, that I don't think I've heard any other folks talking about in quite this way. We're going to be talking about how she took the things she learned in ballet and applied them to her experience in the C-suite. So from ballet to the boardroom, this is going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into any of that, just for some context, I would love to hear just some background on you, Natalie, and maybe a little bit about what you and the folks at Instart are up to these days.
Sure, happy to. I started my professional career after college, which I know we'll get into the previous world in a few minutes. But as a Forrester analyst, I spent about 7 years at Forrester, got into a marketing position after that with Citrix. Part of my interest in the transition was when you're an analyst, you can give all the advice in the world to large companies, but you don't get the follow through. You don't see what happens. So I wanted to transition to the marketing side to be able to see everything that was happening with customers from the point when they're looking at solutions to when they implemented and the struggles and successes they have along the way. So that's what brought me into marketing. Had a couple of different marketing roles and landed at Instart in January, where I got the opportunity to work with a whole bunch of colleagues that I have worked with in the past. So it's a fairly new executive team, all starting in January, and we're out to help our customers deliver experiences that their customers love. And from a technology standpoint, what that really means is that we offer cloud solutions for web application performance and security to ensure that the sites and the applications that their customers are using are as fast as possible, secure as possible, and just deliver an experience that those customers want to use on a day-to-day basis.
Heck yeah. We talk a lot about customer experience on this podcast. And so you are preaching to the choir. And with such, and it's one of the, we've talked offline and she's delightful, guys. And with such passion. So let's get into it. I'm excited to hear this. So you had done ballet for 12 years. And there is this, we talked about offline, this set of skills or the sort of foundational set of character traits that it sort of armed you with moving forward. Talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started dancing, I think when I was 3 years old, my mother tells me, and it was at first just something fun and a passion. And it became something that was looking like a true career. Ballet dancer, like any ice skater, figure skater, any professional athlete, it is your life, especially when you hit your teens. And for me, ballet was my world until I was 16 years old. And it was just one of these things that day in, day out, you go, you try harder, you do something new, you try again, you're hurt, you go more. I remember having a coach who, you get through 5 seconds again. And it's just this strive for perfection. And, ballet was a really great place, I think, for me to understand 3 specific things that I think have done really well in my life: discipline, determination, and drive. And I have, ballet to fully thank for learning those skills at such a young age.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And again, it's not unlike some of the stories we hear about folks, taking their, history as an athlete into the professional world. But I think, yes, there's this focus on grit and overcoming and teamwork, but you've really drilled it down into like this internal set of things that just really stuck with you because of the fall down, get back up, keep doing it until I don't even know what they call things about until your twirl is perfect.
Until you've nailed those swan-like fouetté turns, and like you're done.
And you were saying it also helped you navigate a couple other things. I think when we think about the B2B SaaS world, or when we think about tech, a lot of the talk is about, if you're a female, about how it is to navigate, a male-dominated industry. But you brought up an interesting point when we were speaking offline about how what you noticed most that stuck out to you was a difference in age and experience, and how, you recognize that those were things you were going to have to get out ahead of. Talk a little bit about how you did that and what that experience was like.
Yeah, I absolutely will. I'm going to take us a step backwards just to lay the foundation to how we got there. When I was dancing, my ability to spend time with friends during standard, hangout friend hours didn't exist. That was when I was in the studio. So for me, when I had these bouts of free time, they couldn't be really with people because they were at completely odd hours. So I had to find ways to entertain myself. And for me, I turned to video games and I turned to learning how to code websites. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's the art and technical background combined. But for me, it was just getting into tech. So I started playing video games and coding probably at around 12 years old, starting to play around with websites. I mean, do you remember GeoCities? I mean, those are like the website from the Wayback Machine that I started to use to play with. But for me, it was just something I did. So when an injury forced me to leave ballet, tech just made sense. It's what I've been doing. I understood it. So I became a computer science major. And while there was really only a couple of us who graduated with a computer science degree, when I say couple of us, I mean females. It wasn't something that really drew, it wasn't top of mind. For me, it's not something I thought about. So when I went into the professional world, what I more realized, and I was in tech, was it wasn't so much being a female, at least that's not what it felt like in the moment.
Sure.
What it felt like was my age was holding me back. And maybe, maybe there was female stuff within that I just didn't notice, but I felt I had to work a million times harder, write X number of X reports, do X number of more consulting than anyone else to prove that I could get that next promotion, that I could do those next things. And, again, I go back to ballet, that discipline, determination, and drive is what made me continue to go. And, nobody can say no to me. I'm going to find a way to persevere through. And I do remember at the time, people pulling me aside and saying that, Natalie, RAs, which is one of the entry-level roles, they don't become analysts. It's just not the path. And I was like, well, we'll see about that. And, and then there was a few of us at the time who had the same thought process and paved the way for all of these analysts who've come up behind us to be able to do that. But, from my standpoint, it really wasn't the male dominated tech world that I felt that I was facing. It was really more just an age thing.
Today's growth story is all about search engine marketing. The company we're highlighting is SentinelOne. This challenger cybersecurity brand was set out to disrupt the endpoint protection space. Their brand was top-notch, their product was innovative, but they were struggling to gain traction online in an already developed industry. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first quarter of working with Directive, SentinelOne was able to increase their organic traffic by 128%. And overall lead volume by an outstanding 251%. Now, I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have in our presence, ladies and gentlemen, a trailblazer. That's what I got from that.
I don't know how you got that, but sure.
You know what? Well, you said you guys, you deciding you being told in that role, someone from, it's like telling an SDR you'll never get a closing role, right? There is this prevailing idea in a lot of organizations, right? And you can see it in the way that they train SDRs, right? Is they're training them for that one function, and they're not shadowing AEs, you know what I'm saying, on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
And sort of learning these skills to close. And so, yeah, it does take an enterprising young woman to be like, you know what? Nah, I'm going to go ahead and do this because I believe that I can. So thanks so much for sharing that. And it kind of comes from another element that you said came from ballet, which was this notion of A/B testing everything, right? And sort of figuring out, okay, this doesn't work. All right, what do we do next? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I don't know how many ballet aficionados listen to this podcast, but if you are watching ballet, you'll notice that every single step is perfect. Every turn lands in exactly the right position. When you're turning and you're spotting, which is the idea of just being able to turn around without getting dizzy, everything is perfect. Now that doesn't come naturally. That comes with a lot of practice, and the number of times that dancers fall or will move incorrectly. And it's all because of a slight change in where their arm should be or their foot should be. And when I go back to that coach of mine who was always again, it's because they're trying to get you to put your foot in the exact right space or know the exact feeling of where your arm should be so that you nail that move. And I know that it might seem like a stretch, but I don't feel like marketing is too far away from that, which is, you try a new idea. If it fails, it's not failed. You just have to try something slightly different to see what works. And I think that one of the things that, I've really brought to all of my marketing positions is the idea that nothing we do first is great. We're just going to test and see how we make things better. So on my marketing team, I have folks whose job it is to, every week be running multiple A/B tests on the website. Does changing a button color, does moving a button, does changing a shape, does moving things around, whatever the case may be, changing titles. Every email should have 3 different titles that we're A/B testing when we're pushing out. How can we continue to refine to get things perfect or as close to perfect as we can? And this idea of A/B testing everything and repeating just, I guess, comes naturally to me because I can tell you, I've been in the studio for an hour and a half rehearsing some part. And I don't think we got through more than the first 25 seconds for an hour and a half. And it's because you are just trying to nail how it should be. And they'll say, well, try putting your arm this way or try putting your foot this way. And you're just trying and trying again to get it right. And it's amazing how much it might, as I said, it might not seem like it works with marketing. It absolutely kind of it's natural to me.
It definitely does. Because listen, all right, I know you said that you didn't really experience sort of it being a male-dominated field, but I got to tell you, I have heard many a sports metaphor on a sales floor, and ain't none of them talking about ballet. So, this is the same, right? We're talking about, at the end of the day, that's what the commonality is, right? We're talking about how to create like a culture of excellence. As you're talking about how your coach would say, again, I'm remembering my high school choir teacher who was relentless. We think we got the song down. You think you got the solo. She's stopping you in the middle and she's banging that one note on the piano. This is your note. You're singing here, but this is your note. Until you got it. And I thank her for that. And so you're preaching with the choir. This is really this is heavy stuff. I'm into it. But now that I've successfully picked your brain and extracted things from it for our listeners to value, I'm interested in what you're putting in your brain. So this is the part of the show where I ask you about what learning resource you have been engaging with, whether it's a book you read or a podcast you listen to. What's speaking to you these days, Natalie?
Sure. So my daily podcast that I do not go without, there's actually 2. The Daily, the New York Times. and Recode Decode from Kara Swisher. My learning resource, especially for things non-work related,
Sure.
I am obsessed with Udemy and all of the coursework you can take on photography and Lightroom and all sorts of different things that you can just learn how to do things. And they have 18-hour courses for like $12. You can learn anything. So I'm absolutely obsessed with Udemy. And then the book that I just finished that I love more than anything was Dare to Lead by Brene Brown.
Yeah.
She has so many things that truly speak to me in that book that, I would recommend that to everyone. I have passages highlighted. That book is one of the favorites that I've read in a very long time.
It's one that's in my Audible backlog as we speak.
Bring it up. Bring it to the top.
I will have to start that one next just based on this very strong endorsement. So I know that this has been so much fun and such a unique perspective. I'm sure folks are going to want to connect with you and follow along with you. How can folks do that? How can folks connect with you, Natalie?
Sure. On LinkedIn, Natalie Lambert, and on Twitter, NF Lambert. Yes, my initials are NFL. Kind of ironic. I don't know. Ballet, football dance, football players take ballet to get more flexible. It all works.
Thanks so much, Natalie. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.